In the previous episode, an elder's body began to transform into a female, acquiring features such as a large chest, wide hips, and a curvy behind, much to their dismay. After the transformation, they told the Sword Saint, "No matter where you go, I'll always be able to find you." Upon witnessing this transformation, the Sword Saint realized that they were completely under the control of the Dark Gear. However, Sword Axe smiled upon hearing this, placed his hand on the Dark Gear, and challenged the Sword Saint, suggesting she was underestimating him and that his resentment made the dark power seem insignificant. He then forcefully removed the Dark Gear along with some skin. Upon seeing his new appearance, I was shocked. The elder had become a beautiful girl, which was the true form of Demon Burial. Feeling rejuvenated in her true form, Demon Burial was unfazed by the Sword Saint's declaration to destroy her that day. The Sword Saint summoned her phantom superweapon, the hoof armor of the legendary monster, Phantom Horse King, forged by the Dwarf King himself. This armor, which could increase the wearer's speed tenfold and grant the effect swift as wind, was her choice to defeat Demon Burial. Demon Burial, unconcerned, taunted the Sword Saint to come closer. The Sword Saint responded by appearing behind Demon Burial and using her Mischop technique, destroying a 100-meter radius around them and creating a massive hole in the ground. Despite the power of the attack, the Sword Saint was stunned to see her phantom sword shattered. Demon Burial emerged unscathed, commenting that her body initially felt stiff, which prevented her from blocking a few blows, but acknowledged the Sword Saint's strength. Still determined, the Sword Saint thought about the Phantom Horse King, whose armor couldn't significantly injure Demon Burial, and pondered her next move. Demon Burial, warming up, waited for the Sword Saint to make her next move, which prompted the Sword Saint to summon 2 additional weapons from her storage and use weapon fusion. She created a more powerful weapon by combining the Stalactite Spear, forged over 1,000 years by the Dwarf King from a rare stalactite, and the Insect Scythe, also forged by the Dwarf King using the Insect King, Gem Mantis, as sickle. Additionally, she summoned the Cthulhu Cane and Explosive Knife, both super weapons with their unique dangers and powers. Combining all her super weapons, the Sword Saint launched an all-out attack on Demon Burial. Meanwhile, Demon Burial finished her warm-up, unbothered by the Sword Saint's fury and arrogance. The Sword Saint also summoned the Snow Silkworm Shield, a super weapon forged from the sacred beast, Snow White Silkworm's Pupa Silk by the Dwarf King, known for its toughness and cold air bursts. Demon Burial, however, stood her ground, challenging the Sword Saint's underestimation. Using the combined powers of her weapons, the Sword Saint created a twisted space with the Cthulhu Cane and allowed the Explosive Knife to continuously explode, releasing the Earth's core energy. She knew she could only maintain this energy for a short time before her mind risked invasion. Finally, the Sword Saint summoned the Hammer of All, a super weapon forged by the Dwarf King from the fossilized bones of a mammoth lord. Weighing 100 tons, even a normal blow from this hammer could unleash ultimate power. With this weapon, she aimed for Demon Burial, determined to end the confrontation. However, when Demon Burial used the splitting cut technique and sliced through the Sword Saint's powerful weapon, the Sword Saint was taken aback by the attack. She realized that if she didn't block this attack, she would die. So, without wasting any time, she used Abyss Magic, 7 guard swords, and suddenly, 7 swords appeared in front of her as a shield. However, this was not enough to block Demon Burial's attack, which broke through the Sword Saint's defense and heavily damaged her. In just 0.8 seconds, Demon Burial killed the Sword Saint. Seeing the Sword Saint in this state, Demon Burial wondered if she was truly inadequate. Yet, she was not satisfied with the fight. This was just a warm-up for her. The real battle was about to begin. So, she used her demonic axe to search for any heartless ones. With the help of her demonic axe, she could see for thousands of miles. Suddenly, she saw a house in the middle of nowhere. This was the Leping house, where Leping and Elizabeth lived. She was thrilled to see Elizabeth and exclaimed that she was heading there right away. Meanwhile, at the Leping house, Elizabeth grabbed the remote and turned on the air conditioner, remarking, "Indeed, it's better to go home, turn on the air conditioner, watch TV, and eat chips. I really have to leave all that troublesome world domination thing to you." However, Leping felt physically and mentally exhausted every time he had to go out, wondering if ruling the world was truly not for him. Elizabeth disagreed, insisting that they must do what they have agreed upon, and assured Leping not to worry, promising to aid him. However, Leping was frustrated because of what she had done in the Sword Saint Guild. He asked Elizabeth if she could inform him before taking such actions next time. Some time ago, in the Sword Saint Guild, Elizabeth had killed one of the elders, shocking the Sword Saint Guild president, Elder Sword, who immediately alerted everyone. Butler Ace, the red-haired girl Anna, and her sister unsheathed their swords to attack Elizabeth. Blue Sword also released his sword ki, but after the Great Apostle took over his body, there was not much chi left in him. Meanwhile, Prince Brian was surprised by Elizabeth's overwhelming power, thinking he'd better watch the show from the sidelines. After the incident, Mr. Bose tried to calm everyone down, asking them to listen to him. He then turned to Leping, asking if he could explain the current situation. Leping was confused, wondering what situation Mr. Boss was referring to. Elizabeth explained that, given their level, it was no surprise they had been infiltrated by the Dark Guild. Leping, confused, asked Elizabeth what she meant. She then showcased the sword skill Mr. Tagore had given to Leping, insisting that everyone should pay attention. Subsequently, she unleashed her resolve magic, and suddenly, a parasite appeared in front of everyone. The Sword Saint Guild's president, Elder Sword, was profoundly shocked by the appearance of the parasite. Upon realizing he had been discovered, the parasite began to ponder its next move. However, upon seeing Leping as an easy target with no magic, it immediately attacked him. Leping was taken aback by this sudden assault, having no time to react. Fortunately, Elizabeth acted swiftly and killed the parasite. After Elizabeth had dealt with the parasite, Butler Ash noticed that Mr. Tagore's body was a spell technique. The girl with yellow hair was shocked by this revelation, wondering if even a prominent figure like Mr. Tagore had joined the Dark Guild. The girl with red hair, Anna, explained that it made sense. More and more people were accepting the power of the Dark Guild, and they were able to evade the detection of the Sword of Purification through advanced techniques. Elizabeth commented that this technique was more than a simple mechanism. Had they allowed him to cast a massive technique to fight, the entire area would have become a large-scale hatching site. She laughed, remarking that it would have been ridiculous. Meanwhile, Leping was still reeling from the encounter, wondering if what had attacked him was indeed a parasite. The prospect of being bitten seemed daunting. Elder Sword, curious, questioned Elizabeth on how she discovered the parasite. Elizabeth, however, chose not to disclose her method, stating that it was none of his concern. After hearing this, Elder Sword started laughing, saying, "Although we have grown weak, we still cannot be disregarded." Meanwhile, Mr. Boss was really surprised, thinking, "That's bad. The Elder is someone who is sensitive about his pride. If he doesn't recognize the identities of Mr. Lei Ping and the Demon Queen, he will definitely consider them beneath him. If he offends the Demon Queen, the consequences will be dire." So, he asked Lei Ping, "If you understand what just happened, could you explain it to everyone?" Leping, confused about why Mr. Boss was asking him and having not figured it out himself either, was suddenly interrupted by Elizabeth, who grabbed his hand and said, "It's time for afternoon tea. Discussion time is over. Come home with me now." Leping said goodbye to Mr. Boss, stating, "I'll see you next time." Mr. Boss was really scared, thinking, if Leping doesn't explain himself clearly, that stingy elder will cause trouble for him, even if the Sword Saint returns. There will be no way to save this. Elizabeth became really angry at Mr. Boss, asking him, "Do you want to die?" After hearing this, Mr. Boss quickly shut his mouth and said goodbye to Elizabeth, happily. Meanwhile, Elder Sword asked Butler Ash to follow him. They were going to the south right now to investigate the Sword Saint matter. In the present, Leping asked Elizabeth, "If something like that happens in the future, tell me in advance so I can be mentally prepared." Meanwhile, Elizabeth was thinking, there are two pieces of information worth mentioning now. One is that the guy's glasses can detect other people's magic, probably forged from Jim's red demon eyes. Secondly, the magic power of that one is different from that of the Dark Guild. It's clear that there are still other evil forces outside of the Dark Guild who are on the move, but that doesn't matter. Emilia has eradicated the headquarters of the Dark Guild, and the source of this trouble is no longer there. The remaining ones are just left for Leping to deal with as an adventurer. However, that magic truly scared Leping. He is really glad no such things are living in his yard. But he was really curious and asked Elizabeth, how could she sense that he was a bad guy? Leping wondered if Elizabeth could teach him that skill. He then realized it must be a form of magic that requires magical power, which he lacks the talent for. Elizabeth knew that when the glass was detecting magic power, There was no magical reflection. She explained, "If you're not as strong as me, you won't be able to detect it under normal circumstances. But wearing clothes made by you, you don't need a magical reflection to detect all malicious intentions the other party wishes to inflict." Leping, feeling underestimated, questioned if his inquiry was perceived as mockery, aiming to challenge her authority as the Demon Queen. Elizabeth, visibly annoyed, retorted that Leping was not worth her attention. Feeling anxious, Leping asked Elizabeth what he should do next. "Is it really enough to just swing the sword 1,000 times a day? I need to learn some sword moves, right? But the Sword Saint Guild refused to take me in. Why don't you teach me?" he implored. Elizabeth firmly declined, outlining the prerequisites for him to rule the world. He must rely solely on his swordsmanship and magic. Besides his clothes, he cannot take any of his other creations with him. And although she will accompany and guide him, she will not teach him any magic or swordsmanship. Confused, Leping wondered when they had agreed on these terms. Elizabeth replied, "We agree on them just now." Frustrated, Leping threatened to seek Uncle Bose's guidance again. Even if he switched to cards, Uncle Bose should still be able to teach him the swordsmanship he had learned before. However, Holy Sword Alpha, transforming into his human form, advised Leping to give up, stating that they simply could not teach him pure swordsmanship. Leping, puzzled, asked what pure swordsmanship was. Alpha explained that even without relying on magic, none of their techniques would be effective. He questioned why anyone would learn pure swordsmanship just to strengthen their body if magic was available. Leping, conceding to Alpha's logic, admitted, "What you're saying makes sense. In this magical world, combat demands the use of magic sword techniques that integrate magic. However, a sudden recollection of pure swordsmanship and body strengthening made Leping stand up from his seat and head towards the bookshelf, exclaiming that he had found what he was looking for. Holy Sword Alpha, curious, wondered what Leping had discovered, especially since this was his first visit in a while. Leping recalled obtaining the item randomly from the system as a gift, only to discard it on the bookshelf where it collected dust. Was this the item he was referring to? Holy Sword Alpha was curious about what kind of place could keep Elizabeth so engaged, preventing her from wanting to rule the world. He decided to investigate but was surprised by the many unfamiliar things he encountered, questioning what these strange items were. As he ventured further, he suddenly felt an intense killing intent. Unable to discern the source, he realized he had just been metaphorically killed. He wondered, was it him? No, such a sharp intent didn't match. Was it her? That didn't seem right either, as her killing intent should be more violent and terrifying. He then realized the intent was emanating from the kitchen, but was shocked to see kitchen knives. How is this possible? I am the king of weapons, Holy Sword Alpha, unable to comprehend how he could feel threatened by mere kitchen knives. Overwhelmed by fear, he fled the house, declaring his refusal to stay. Leping, confused by Alpha's sudden departure but not overly concerned, had finally found what he was searching for. The Tai Chi sword technique, known for its ease of learning and moderate exercise, promised health benefits like disease prevention, life extension, and fitness maintenance, and could even prevent osteoporosis and arthritis. It aimed to unveil the mysteries of nature. Surprised by his previous disregard for it, Leping found the book useful now. It outlined 13 Tai Chi sword movements, seemingly simple and learnable by individuals of all ages, without requiring magic. Now, he was genuinely curious if it could be effective in battle. So, he asked Elizabeth if she could help him with a sword manual he had found. Elizabeth, feeling sleepy after eating so many chips, declined Leping's request, advising him to go and play by himself as she wanted to lie down for a bit. Leping was really disappointed with Elizabeth's response, stating that he would go out to find Alpha and try it out. After Leping left, Elizabeth started smiling, thinking to herself, "You won't be able to master swordsmanship anytime soon. I'll just let you practice slowly and blindly on your own. When you hit a wall and have no idea what to do next, I'll step in and guide you. Only then can I underscore my superior position to you." Leping, after coming out of the house, started calling Holy Sword Alpha's name, asking where he was. But suddenly, he noticed that Holy Sword Alpha had turned into his sword form again. Confused, Leping warned Holy Sword Alpha that if he ignored him, he would take it as his consent to start practicing now. However, there was no response from Holy Sword Alpha. So, he opened the Tai Chi sword skill book and began practicing the first move. Like a dragonfly, touching the water. Meanwhile, 300 kilometers away, Toad Immortal, A level 3-star demon ancestor and the frog shown at the start of this manhwa was in bad shape, his body covered in blood. He was fighting with demon burial, so he used his stomach acid mist technique and attacked demon burial. However, the technique did not work, and demon burial began attacking, declaring that as long as she killed him, the others would obediently surrender. So, she used chopping shoot and attacked him, sending Toad Immortal flying across the field.